Hi everybody, I'm glad you're here to read with me. Today we're going to be reading chapter 15 of The Skin I'm In. We are smack dab in the middle of the rising action, and our goal here really is to watch how our character and her conflict are progressing or escalating. In other words, how they're moving to this changing point, which we'll call the climax. I'm asking you to track three things, and those three things are: how is our character herself changing in response to her conflict? What other characters affect her? And what circumstances affect her? If you've already been to Google Classroom, then you know that this week I'm asking you to look at the circumstance of Miss Saunders' class and her assignments. How do those affect Malika? You'll do a double entry journal about that. Which means on the right-hand side, you'll answer that question about how her class affects Malika. And on the left-hand side, you'll provide textual evidence by copying a quotation, a sentence, or more out of the text directly to support what you're saying. After that, you're going to answer a question comparing and contrasting the characters of Miss Saunders with Char and how both of these characters do affect Malika in quite a big way, but their effects on Malika are very different. So when you answer that, please make sure you're answering incomplete sentences with textual evidence as well. And then finally, I'm giving you a critical thinking question, which comes from a quote in this chapter. And I want you to examine the idea that we see that Miss Saunders is quite disruptive to the school environment in this particular chapter. And I'm asking you to grapple or explore the question of, can disruption ever be a good thing? Why do you believe that, or why not? And if you do believe it can be good, when is disruption good for us? So that's all that you're asked to do in Google Classroom. Please be sure that you are completing those assignments. I love that I'm getting to read with you here, but it does not replace the assignments. You are still responsible for those. Okay, so let's get to it. Chapter 15. Miss Saunders has really got all the other teachers stirred up, except for Ty. Most of them don't like her. They say Mr. Pajoli's sucking up to her so that maybe her company will donate lots of money to the school. Maybe even get us some computers and a new library. All of this makes the other teachers resent Miss Saunders even more. In the office, the teachers never say her name. They just say, she did this and she did that. I hate pushy people, Miss Benson, the English teacher, is saying when she comes into the office with Mr. Pajoli. Every day she's coming to me with some new ideas she came up with, questioning why things can't be done differently. Mr. Pajoli tries to quiet Miss Benson down, but she just gets louder and her face grows red. Raising her finger to him, she says, "You get her in line, Charles. She's disrupting everything. Everything." Mr. Pajoli's nodding, while his eyes go over the messages Miss Carroll hands him. That's the third parent calling to complain this week. Too much homework. Too much reading, Miss Carroll says. A big smile comes over Miss Benson's face. Don't tell me. Let me guess who they're complaining about. Mr. Pajoli scratches his bald head. He lets out a deep breath and says he'll take care of things. Then the phone rings. Yes, he's here. Miss Carroll presses down the hold button and smiles. Someone else calling about your favorite person. Mr. Pajoli clicks his false teeth together. Send it back to my office, he tells Miss Carroll. Miss Benson touches up the edges of her lipstick with her finger and walks off humming. Miss Carroll tells me to get back to work and stop being so nosy. I go and staple papers together over in the corner. It's good to see teachers get in as much trouble as kids do sometimes. The office is a busy place. Folks come and go like this is a bus stop on a corner. As soon as I get a few papers stapled, here comes someone else wanting something. This time it's Desda. Hey Malika, I need me a note to get into class. I've been to the dentist, she says, pulling out a balled up piece of paper with some writing on it. I look into Miss Carroll's direction. She's heading over to give Desda what she needs. While she's doing that, here comes Charlize. I don't see the twins nowhere. Charlize, shouldn't you be in class? Miss Carroll asks, still tending to Desda. In a minute, Char snaps, waiting for me to come over to the other end of the counter. Miss Carroll's voice is squeaky and high-pitched, like a wheel that needs some oil. Charlize Jones! I don't know what you think is going on here, but Malika is doing a job for the principal, and you, young lady, had better hightail it to class, which means she needs to go fast. Char just laughs at Miss Carroll. You act like Malika is working for the President of the United States, man. Miss Carroll shoves the note over to Desda. All right, get to class. Desda's looking at me like I did something wrong. Charlize takes out a stick of gum and pushes it into her mouth real slow. Miss Carroll looks like she's going to go off on her. Then out comes Mr. Pajoli. Hello, Mr. P, Char says in a sweet baby voice. You think maybe one day I can work here too? Maybe answer the phone or something? Char stands there in her skin-tight striped pantsuit with her finger in her mouth like a 2-year-old. Mr. Pajoli knows Char ain't the least bit like that for real. Sure, Charlize. You may start working in the office as soon as you pay the fines for those 3 library books and 2 math books you lost last year. Char starts arguing with Mr. Pajoli about how she ain't never had those things and how everybody is out to get her. Anyhow, she says, I ain't no slave. If I work for somebody, there's got to be some dollars involved. Mr. Pajoli tells Char to move along and get to class. For what? She says, headed out. All these teachers is boring me to death. Mr. Pajoli asks her what class she has now. Math with Ty, Char says. Nobody can be bored in her class unless they want to be, Mr. Pajoli says, walking out with her. Mr. Pajoli is right, too. Ty is funny. She meditates a lot, so during her class break, it ain't unusual to see her sitting on the desk with her legs folded and her arms crossed. She's different, but she can teach. I used to get all A's in Ty's class last year. Since I got this office gig, Ty's been bugging me about keeping up my average. She came right in here yesterday and asked me where my homework was. Mr. Pajoli was standing right at the desk, too. I lied and said it was in my locker. Ty asked Mr. Pajoli if it was okay for me to go get it. Then I had to fess up and tell her I forgot to do it. She asked Mr. Pajoli if it's okay for me to use my office time to do my math homework. He said yeah, but that I have to make up the time later. Teachers don't do nothing but cause you grief. I swear, that's all they do. Hopefully you feel the same way, but perhaps you do. Okay, so we're examining throughout the entire novel, Malika's conflict is that she has low self-esteem and people tease her. The conflict's not going to change. It's just going to grow and develop. So it might evolve, which means it might look different in different forms, or she might be reacting to it different, but it will still be the conflict all the way through the climax, and that's the point when it will change. During the rising action, we're watching how it is evolving. Specifically, we're watching how other characters are affecting our main character, Malika. I want to specifically challenge you with Miss Saunders and Char being the 2 main people who affect her. However, they affect her very differently. Secondly, I want to ask you about how circumstances, so the things that happen to our character, how do they change her and affect her problem? And finally, how is she herself changing? Hopefully you've realized even in real life that when we face a problem, it changes who we are. And hopefully most of the time for the better, although not always, unfortunately. So we're watching how Malika is changing and how she's growing as a person. And as she does so, it's going to help her get to a point where she's able to change in a way that is going to change or solve her conflict once we get to that climax. So that's what you're thinking through right now. Make sure you've gone to Google Classroom and completed the assignment. The only part of the assignment this chapter might really help you with is the question of, is it ever a good thing to be disruptive? The other teachers are saying that Miss Saunders is disruptive. So think about the way Miss Saunders is affecting Malika. Is that positive or negative? Think about the way that people who have disrupted or changed your life, you've been trying to do a certain thing all the time and they won't let you just keep going the same way you've been going. Is that a good thing? Bad thing? Is it ever good? So think about that question and respond to it on Google Classroom. I love getting to read your responses. I miss your faces, but it's always good to read your notes and your responses and to interact with you during my tutoring hours. If you don't know, I do tutor on Google Classroom. My technical tutoring hours are Mondays from 3:30 to 4:30, but I'm on there every day from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. and I can schedule a different time if neither of those times work for you. So if you're struggling or you just need to chat for a minute, make sure you drop me a note and I'm happy to do that for you. That's all for now.